Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for stopping by the channel. So as you can see, there's a bit of a change of scenery from my normal studio in London, Ontario. My wife and I just escaped to the Dominican. A bit nicer weather than the winters in Canada. And for this trip, I was really interested in just trying to find a timepiece that would suit the beach weather. So I picked up this Oris Aquis. This is their version 2 of the Dat Watt. And it takes its identity from the salt marshes of the Wadden Sea, and it's honestly a really great timepiece. The dial is a really cool green fume pattern, and I really like what Oris has been doing with their dials and ocean conservation as of late. So why don't we flip perspectives now, and we can take a closer look at this watch in the studio. So I made it safely home from my vacation, and now that we're in the studio, we can talk more about this specific model of the Oris Aquis, which I forgot to mention at the start is a limited edition. There's only 2,009 pieces in total. As such, you do get some extra goodies in the box. So you get the blue rubber strap, which I took with me to the Dominican. I like the Oris branding. The clasp is also quite nice. It has on-the-fly micro extension on it, and you can even cut the strap to size if your wrist size is really small. But then of course it also comes with the OEM Oris bracelet, and there's even a strap changing tool in the box. I'm going to talk more about the tool a little bit later in the video. But in the hand, this watch feels extremely solid on the bracelet, which I really enjoy. The articulation is extremely nice on the bracelet. You can even collapse the links together like so. And while the clasp doesn't have toolless micro extension, there's 3 anchoring points here. And then if you do open it up, there's even a diver's extension if you wanted to throw the bracelet over a wetsuit. And here's an in-studio wrist shot to show you how this Aquis wears on the bracelet, sized up to my 7.5-inch wrist. And as you can see, it conforms to the wrist very well. The weight of this watch head on the bracelet sized up for 7.5 inches is 177 grams, which isn't too bad considering this is a 300-meter dive watch. And of course, if you want to go more for comfort, you can lighten the overall weight if you swap out the bracelet for the supplied rubber strap. In terms of overall dimensions, I would say that this is the standard Aquis size, which is to say it's 43.5 millimeters in diameter. If you turn the watch to the side, the lug-to-lug distance between my thumbs is an even 50 millimeters. And because of the integrated nature of the bracelet, there's no real overhang with the bracelet end links. You can see they pull straight down. So even if your wrist size is smaller, like say 7 inches, I would definitely recommend you go with the standard size Aquis. You can get smaller diameter divers from Oris if you want, but this one wears extremely well. Now I do measure overall thickness at 12.9 millimeters. That's from the top of a slightly domed sapphire crystal and then to the bottom of a screwed down case back. And this one's nice because you don't have the standard exhibition window. This is a sealed case back with Dat Watt limited edition engraving, which I find is a very nice touch. And it gives you the limited edition number you have as well. But really the star of the show for me is this dial, and I currently don't have any type of colorway similar to this in my collection, which is why I gravitated towards this watch. It's a light turquoise color towards 12 o'clock, and then as you migrate down towards the 6, it becomes more of a moss green color. And it really does mimic the salt marshes of the Wadden Sea quite well. Now, if you're familiar with Aquis models, the handset and applied markers are going to be fairly standard. They're high polished and rhodium plated with strips of BGW9 lume running down the centers. Where the design is a little bit different for this particular limited edition is that it's not a standard seconds hand. It's offset and at the 9 o'clock position of a subdial, and only the cardinal markers, so like the 60 seconds, 15, 30, and 45 are actually marked. And then instead of a normal date window at the 6, what you have is a date disc on the inner circumference that's there. And the way you can tell which actual day of the month it is there's a white index which is currently positioned at the 24. I'll admit, it's not the easiest way to read the date, nor read the time down to the seconds, but the overall design characteristics and symmetry to the dial, as well as that cool gradient color, really works for me in this instance. For the bezel insert, it's a brushed tungsten insert. It's a coin edge style bezel, and if you've handled any Oris Aquis models in the past, it's a very mechanical feeling and loud bezel, but it's very tactile and precise as well, and everything lines up the way it should, and there's zero backplay. So overall, very good and crisp bezel action. In terms of the automatic caliber inside this watch, Oris calls it their caliber 743. It's really based on a Sellita SW220-1, slightly modified, and of course you do have the sub-second dial and the date disc complication that's there instead of your standard date. Now all of this is operated via the screw-down crown, which is nicely signed by Oris and knurled very well. And I will say you get a very satisfying pop once you open it up. In the open position, you can manually wind the movement. In the first crown position, you can actually jump the date around the date disc that's there. You can see the white date index moving around. And then if you pull out the crown to extremity, you can actually stop the sub-seconds hand here by hacking the balance. And that way you can set accurately to any reference time that you want. In terms of low light legibility, the BGW9 lume applied to this watch is very evenly coated. It's not going to be the most intense lume that you see, but I will say that it lasts for a very long period of time. So I'm quite happy with the low light legibility for this particular timepiece. Now I do want to briefly transition and talk about the strap changing tool that's provided by Oris. It's actually really well knurled, and there's a couple of different tool head options. They're actually safely kept at the back of this tool, but this three-headed star tool that is required to fit into the sides of the lugs to swap out the bracelet for the strap, I found quite cumbersome to use. You can get it to work, and I've obviously swapped out the strap and bracelet a couple of times, but I wish they went with a quick exchange system. Or they also used to just have a fine slot screw head on the sides of the lugs for the original Aquis divers, which I kind of prefer. The other quirky feature about the strap changing tool is that they do give you a slot screw head, which I think is intended to size the individual links. But I found that the width of a slot screw head on this particular tool was too wide to fit into the sides of the links, so I had to use a smaller one from my personal toolkit, and that was kind of a bummer. So overall, not very impressed with the supplied tool, but it will get the job done, at least swapping out the bracelet and the strap. And the only other area for improvement I would say is that if you're really just gunning for a dive watch that's extremely legible and can tell you the date and time very quickly, this isn't going to be the one you gravitate towards, because those complications aren't as legible or obvious to the eye. But I do think that they give you more visual interest. And again, this gradient dial is absolutely gorgeous. I do have to applaud Oris for the dials that they are making in their Aquis models. Not only is it supporting ocean conservation, but they're actually pulling out materials from the ocean like recycled plastics and nets and making base dials for that are quite unique and very colorful. So I would say if you're considering your next dive watch, and in the price range that this watch is, which I'll tell you in a second, you're really getting competition from like a TAG Aqua Racer or like a Breitling Super Ocean. I would say this Oris does stand on its own a little bit more because it's got its own design language and the dial color is really unique. Now for this limited edition model, the retail MSRP is just over 4,300 Canadian dollars, which is really steep actually. And I will say I did not pay retail for this, and I don't think you should either. And even if you look on, say, the secondary market for these watches to come out, you're going to be saving a ton of cash as well. But as always, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this particular model of the Oris Aquis. And if you do enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me out a ton. So that's going to wrap up this review, and I can't wait to catch you guys in the next video.